It's hard to believe. Today marks my 2-year anniversary of discovering MLP. If you had told me 2 years, 5 days ago that within a week I would be a devoted fan of a television show featuring pastel-colored ponies aimed for 6-year-olds, I'd have laughed in your face. And yet here we are. It is amazing that I got into the show and amazing that I've now been part of fandom for 2 years. If you'll forgive a bit of reminiscing, I'd like to take today's video to celebrate that and look back over MLP and my time in the fandom and look at what MLP has motivated me to do, what it's enabled me to do. I suppose you could say what MLP has done for me. Well, aside from giving my apartment an overall decorating theme. Well, probably the most obvious is these videos themselves. Before getting into MLP, I had no desire to do YouTube videos. I knew nothing about audio or video editing, and I didn't have any interest in learning. That was not in my wheelhouse. And yet, discovering MLP made me want to go out there and have a forum for my ideas and theories and just share the show with people who liked it as well. So, as a result of getting into MLP, I have expanded what I can do. I have pushed the envelope. I now know how to record and audio edit and video edit. While I'll freely admit I'm not an expert at it, I have made tremendous progress and can do a halfway decent job. This never would have happened. I never would have gained those skills had it not been for MLP. It has also broadened my musical horizons. Before I got into MLP, I wasn't exactly that into music, and both back then and still now, I can't really hold a tune to save my life. However, I did and do like listening to music, especially in the background. But before I got into MLP, my musical tastes were very selective. And now, thanks to getting into MLP and discovering not just the music in the show, but the remixes and the original songs the Brony community has made, my musical horizons have expanded dramatically. I have a much more developed musical palette than I did in the past. For example, before I got into MLP, I hated dubstep. It just sounded like a bunch of noise. Now, while I'm not going to say I love dubstep, I can understand dubstep. I can understand the appeal, and there are some dubstep music that I like. It may not appeal to me all the time, but I can understand why it would appeal to some people. If it hadn't been for MLP, that never would have occurred. I never would have sought out and listened to music that would expand my palette. It has opened up a whole world there. It's also possible that MLP is responsible for some of my awards that I got in college. I formed a Brony club for my school, and it's possible, no way obviously I can confirm or deny this, but it's possible I received a couple of the awards I did when I graduated because I had created a new organization and was a leader then of my school's community. No proof one way or the other there, but it's fully possible that I owe some of my awards to getting into MLP and creating a Brony club. It would be kind of amusing if that were the case. Speaking of school, I also sometimes used MLP as a way of comforting and saying how I should act. Sometimes if I thought I had not done very well on a test, going to class the day I thought we were going to get it back, I'd go, be like Rarity, have grace and dignity even in defeat. Now, normally it didn't come to that, but it was comforting and calming when it was still in doubt. As with everything, though, unfortunately not everything MLP has done has been fun or super helpful. In particular, prior to getting into MLP, I didn't really care about copyright law. I understood the theoretical argument for why there was copyright law and it seemed reasonable, but I didn't understand the flip side. Having been part of the Brony fandom and having felt the rage of stuff like Hasbro shutting down Fighting Is Magic or Jan Animations, I understand the other side of the argument, and it has made me much, much, much more skeptical about copyright law. I still believe it's a valid thing and is necessary, but I believe that the law is too harsh as it stands. And my suspicion is this feeling that I've gotten, thanks to Hasbro's actions, will stick with me long after the show is off the air. This is one of those cases where Hasbro may have won the battles, but it may yet lose the war. To get off sad, depressing topics, because this is a time to reminisce about what it has done for me, MLP has been responsible for some of my greatest accomplishments, some of the things I am proudest of. Probably the most obvious of those is my essay on Rarity. Now, anyone who's been watching my channel for a while knows, before I did my video on why I think Rarity will replace Princess Celestia, I wrote an essay on that. That's where that came from. It's over 120 pages if you include the appendix. This is by far the longest serious academic essay I've ever written. It not only proves that I can do it, but it has also taught me how to keep a coherent, strong argument over such a long document. My MLP essay on Rarity will always be my first over 100-page essay. However, this is not the thing I am proudest of. Long before I got into MLP, I was a modder. In particular, I would modify Paradox Interactive's games. Usually I just kind of tweaked this or tweaked that and added a new country here or there, but nothing particularly big. Oh, I had grand ideas, but those very rarely got off the ground. A few months after getting into MLP, I said, hey, it would be cool to add Equestria to my favorite game, at least at the time, Europa Universalis 3. So I decided to start modding that. While it started off as a simple mod, it quickly expanded and ballooned until it has now become my biggest, most ambitious mod I have ever attempted. And while I'm still not technically finished with it, I did get far enough to have an alpha release, and it's the farthest I've ever made on a mod, and I still intend to finish it. It's massive at this point. It's probably over 1 million lines of code, added tons of new countries, over 1,000 new events. It's massive. I'm very, very proud of the work I did and I'm still doing there. There is no question in my mind that doing my Equestria Universalis mod has massively, massively, massively increased my modding and programming skills. Well, unfortunately, Paradox came out with a new version of the game, Europa Universalis 4, and unfortunately a lot of the stuff isn't backwards compatible, so I'm having to redo and do a lot of bug fixing to get it to work for that. But I do still intend to, and I'm still working on that. It's also amusing to note that it's possible I got my job partially because of my mod. When applying for my job, I mentioned that I had done this mod, though I never stated what it actually was. They didn't ask to see more on it, but it's possible the fact that I had been on my own doing such a big ambitious project led them to consider me more favorably and take me more serious. No proof of that, but it's, once again, possible that I got my job, at least in part, due to ponies, which I would find kind of amusing. However, there's one more positive thing MLP has done for me. Last April, when I was preparing to go to BabsCon, I decided to do a little bit of light cosplay. So I went out and got a pair of pants the week before the convention in order to finish my costume. Unfortunately, the pants were a little bit too tight. They weren't quite the right size. Now, I'm a big guy, both in terms of height, over 6 foot, but also in terms of weight. Back in April, I was definitely overweight and could very well have been considered obese. Well, because the pants were so tight, I decided to eat less that last week before the convention in an attempt to lose enough weight for the pants to fit okay and to be comfortable at the con. That week was horrific. Every night I went to bed, I thought I was going to die. It just felt so bad. But when I got to the con, my eating less had paid off because the pants, while still very snug, fit well enough to not be uncomfy. However, when I got back from the convention, I discovered I had lost 5 pounds that week. And I said to myself, you know what? Let's just keep this going. Fortunately, it got easier. My stomach shrank so that I didn't mind eating less food, and I continued to lose weight. And now I have lost about 70 pounds. I am now within my healthy weight range. It's amazing. If it had not been for MLP, I may have at some point tried to lose weight, but may never have happened, and I wouldn't have had the same motivation to try to lose it. MLP was responsible for me losing 70 pounds. MLP is responsible for me becoming healthier. It quite possibly has lengthened my lifespan. It's hard to believe what MLP has done for me. From appreciating more music, to doing grand projects, to living a healthier lifestyle. I owe so very much to MLP. So thank you, Miss Faust. Thank you for creating such a great show that has had such a positive impact upon my life. And now, I'm curious as to you. Please feel free to share what MLP has done for you. I'd be interested to see how MLP has affected the lives of its fans. So thank you very much for watching and putting up with my rambling reminiscence. Until next time, stay derpy, my friends.